Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Blair Johnson with the Badass Records podcast, welcoming you in for another episode. Pleased to share with you all that this week's guest is none other than Derrick Benitz. That's Derrick Benitz. He is Nomad Photog, NOMADPHOTOG on Instagram, and DerrickBenitz.com is his super handsome website. Really enjoyed my conversation with Derrick. Please check out his stuff. Give him a follow. Podcast episodes air Thursdays on YouTube or where you stream. The socials are Instagram and Twitter if you want to keep tabs on the thing that way. Badassrecords.com. No, that's not right. Badassrecordspodcast.com is the website, and hollering at me can happen via badassrecordspodcast@gmail.com. Hope you're hanging in there in this current climate in our lovely country. Be safe, be kind, stay warm if you're dealing with a cold. Appreciate you stopping by. Hope you enjoy the show. So, where are we at? I think this will be episode 160 of Badass Records podcast. Derrick Benitz, welcome.
Thank you.
Very nice to meet you.
Pleasure to be here.
So you are at Nomad Photog on Instagram.
Yep,
right?
That's my handle.
And then DerrickBenitz.com, 2 R's in Derrick and 1 N, and it ends with a Z.
Yep.
DerrickBenitz.com. Incredible content on both spots. Very nice. And I got a couple of quote snippets here.
Okay.
And it doesn't mean to suggest that they're more important than any of the other verbiage. They're just the ones that caught my eye. But I am fascinated by the human experience, not just on the individual level, but our shared experience on this planet. In the end, I just want people to slow down and truly consider their place and our place in the world.
That sums it up pretty well for me.
There's lots of other stuff in there, but I thought that maybe those might be good summary bullet points. Did that come to you whenever it was that you wrote that piece? Did that come to you quickly, or did you have to retool it?
I spend a good deal of time. I think like anyone who does photography for long enough, you kind of think, what is my place in all of this? Why am I doing this? What is my goal for all of it? And so there is some refinement there, but I'm the kind of person who thinks philosophically about life, the world, basically everything. And so it kind of led me down that path of, ultimately, what is there to be gained from my photography? What makes it different from every other photographer that's out there? Or at least enough of them to differentiate myself. And so it just made sense for me that this is, they say write what you know. Well, I kind of want to shoot what I know.
Yeah.
The whole concept of, what is this existence even? What is the point of it? What's with this interaction? Why do we do the things that we do? What are the oddities, the things that stand out to us? What do those mean? And then that's kind of on the micro level. And I also think about what about society in general? What is this whole thing that we've created here? Why are things like this? Questions like that.
Yeah.
So, and then kind of my goal is to have an audience look at my photo and consider, even in a very small way, those types of questions. Just stop and think about the things that we just float through life never considering.
Right.
And take for granted and, consider, what if things were a little bit different? that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So whenever I do any type of photography, it's that sort of goal
Cool.
in mind.
I love, my brain, probably all of our brains, if you're of a certain age, function a little bit differently since technology and the internet. Like reading, I don't know if you're into stand-up comedy at all, but Nate Bargatze,
Oh yeah, I like Nate.
he has a new special on Netflix called Your Friend.
I have seen that.
Okay.
Mind you, a lot of what I watch, I'm editing photos.
Right.
So my retention is awful.
Yeah.
But I
Well,
saw it and I liked it.
yeah,
I know that much.
He's got a good bit. I mean, the whole thing's great, but he's got a good bit in there about reading. And he's like, the problem is my eyes are great readers, but my brain is a horrible reader. So my eyes will be like, dude, this is our 5th time on this sentence. You're not picking up any of this? You want to move on, try something else? I didn't yet have that. I mean, I had a little bit of that as a young person, but I used to love to, I could kill hours reading. And now it's like, it's a challenge. I know that that's a habit or a thought process I can work myself out of, but I'm not there yet.
Right.
Point being, I love when I have just read a passage and I don't have any hiccups in comprehending. So I'm following the narrative. I'm following what's happening, but at the same time, my brain goes, man, the way that the author just strung that series of words together is like magic.
Yeah.
Like I'm a little intoxicated by how amazing that was. And I am as novice as one could be in the world of photography, but when a piece of work is good, it's mesmerizing to a level that's like that, where you kind of go, I should stop staring at that person's face. Like the amount of time that I just spent looking at the fascinating elements that go into a good piece.
That is a huge compliment. I really
well, it
appreciate
happened. I didn't get too deep in your IG page or your website, but enough that I was convinced that if I kept going, I would continue to have those same experiences. So, street portraits. Origin story for this idea.
I kind of through that Nelson Atkins project. So we talked about Evelyn Hofer.
Yes.
That's what she did. So I'd always been into street photography, but street photography I kind of have a love-hate with it. On the one hand, I love that you are showing the world as it is. Like, street photographers want to be sneaky, not because they want to be assholes.
Right. Or creeps.
Yeah. They're being sneaky because they want people unguarded.
Yeah.
We all change our behavior the second we realize we're being watched.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it. But you do kind of have to be sneaky, and that's not in me. So what I decided was I would try to take portraits of people with them knowing. Now, the reason that not everybody does that is because as soon as I tell them, of course, they're going to start being guarded, but that can be overcome. And to get the type of image like what you're describing, where the viewer is just drawn in and you're like, I can't describe it, but there's something about this.
It can be a sneaker. Like, I've never had feelings about a shoe like this before. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, for me, it's definitely with people.
Right.
And that's what it is. That's where the real skill comes in, is drawing that out in a person and then taking the photo at the right instant.
Yeah.
That you have made this real connection. They're now unguarded, even if for a split second, and you capture that.
Yeah, because you could go click, 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 and like that 6th or 7th one, you can tell that they slipped into their real self for a half second or whatever.
Yeah, that's certain. Well, since I shoot film, I definitely don't do that. It's one and done. Maybe I take 2 pictures of somebody.
You mentioned this shooting film thing before we were rolling, and I didn't really understand it.
Oh, really?
Can you, just because I don't live in that world, so can you,
Yeah.
you shoot film, meaning,
So, film is the old photography process. I think it existed. It was the primary deal until the late 90s, probably.
you're talking darkroom and okay.
Film photography, not film video like a lot of people
That's
think.
what threw me out. I was like, so how do you get a still
Oh, yeah.
portrait out of a film video? Anyway.
Yeah. So I like to shoot film. I like to hold the thing when I'm done, and I like that I can take a creative process and go like a little bit further rather than spending more time on my computer, which is what digital is. So I will typically pull out my giant, a Mamiya RB67 is what I shoot with primarily. It's a very old camera, completely manual. There's no battery that goes in this thing. It's just
Wow.
you manually focus it, you manually move all the knobs, aim it, and shoot.
Okay.
But it's one thing to develop black and white film. It's a whole different ballgame to develop color film.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then scanning it, or like you mentioned, the darkroom. Black and white darkrooms are very straightforward. Color is not the same.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, all that to say, I still shoot color because I like it, but I shoot digital of everything that I do just in case. I've been burned before.
Meaning 2 devices?
Yeah, so I'll bring a digital camera. Plus, anytime I shoot a portrait of somebody, I want to share that with them.
Absolutely.
And
Okay.
I know that it's going to take me a year or more to get them this other thing. So I'm just like, let's shoot this too, and I'll send you these copies. So, and people love it. So
Cool.
yeah.
Have you seen Interstellar?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great movie.
I love, there's a lot of reaction videos to that one.
Okay.
Great movie for sure. I saw a clip like a week or 2 ago, interview with Matthew McConaughey, talking about the infamous scene where he watches 23 years of video footage from his kids. Mm-hmm. You remember that? And he has like the epic crying.
Yes.
So the point of the clip, the point of the question was, how did you do that? How did you make it seem like you were actually Cooper and experiencing all of that sorrow and sadness? And he said, well, I said, don't tell me what's coming. Don't tell me what's on the other end of these. Let's just roll, and we'll, first take will probably be pretty solid. Mm-hmm. And that's what they used was first take. They did a bunch of other takes, but he's like, now I know what's coming on the other end. So every take after take 1, that's acting.
Yeah.
Like I was able to really sort of be, or, that character. And I was like, so back to the capturing of, somebody, if they let their guard down for a half sec.
Yeah. And he is a trained actor. The man does it professionally.
Yeah.
And yet even he knows if I can do this real, it's going to be better.
Yeah. And
so,
they were like, let's take 3, take 4. And he's like, I'm telling you, take 1's where it's at. And then afterwards they were like, yeah, that was the one.
That's exceptional. And like, not to get too far off topic here, but I'm very big into movies as well. And I think like the things that actors put themselves through emotionally to get that, I cannot imagine.
I've tried. I'm like, what would I think about that would make me that sad? I don't know. Man.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy.
Put myself through emotional torture so that I can have a better scene.
So these street portraits, again, DerrickBenitz.com or Nomad Photog, there's some of both. Some are on both, right?
Yeah. I'm really bad at putting stuff on my website or my social media.
Okay.
They're there.
I did find myself surprised that in looking on the website that it ended quicker than I expected.
Yeah.
As far as just scrolling but whatever.
Yeah.
So you've had to have had a variety of responses from people when you approach them and ask. can I take your portrait or take your picture or whatever. What have some of the, has there been a big variety? And if so, what are some examples of what you've gotten?
There has been a variety. I will say my success rate is much higher than I assumed it would be, and I think that most people assume. I think my success rate is about 85% of
Okay.
people say yeah. And, you know, I get questions like, well, for what? And
Yeah.
I say, well, probably nothing. Let's be honest here. Most of what I take lives in, I have a book that holds my negatives, and that's where it's at.
Yeah.
Now, I'm out there honing my craft, so that's part of why I do this. I also really enjoy it. But also, sometimes you don't know if you've got anything until way later.
Right.
So, but I just try to tell people very honestly, like, this is what I enjoy. There's certainly no malice intended with this. I want you to look good. I stop people because they have an interesting or unique look. Though I'm at a point now where I'm trying to figure out, like, that's too biased. That's too biased an attitude to have. I should be stopping somebody who is blending in so perfectly, you know?
Yeah.
Because
I love that. Yeah.
you never know. First of all, we're making a record of what's going on today, not we're making a record of only the interesting people of what's going on today. So that's the kind of philosophy type stuff I'm thinking on a regular basis to refine.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So have you ever tried to be persuasive when you get an initial no, or do you immediately say thank you and walk away from every no?
If I'm trying to be persuasive, I mean, it's been very rare and it's mild. It's like, okay, you know, no problem. I love your look, though. You have a great look. Something like that. I might just say, like, it could be a very cool photo, but I totally understand. That would be the extent of it.
Okay.
Because there's never any pressure. Like I said, I don't know what's going to be a great photo or not.
Right.
So.
Nobody's ever gotten angry or aggressive with you?
No.
Nice.
Never once.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, so this is your gig? Is this not just a passion project? This is what you do for a living, or no?
That sort of thing earns me basically zero money.
But there is a contact or for hire portion of your site?
Yeah, so I have my own business. It's Black Fox Photography.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that.
It's okay, I don't advertise.
Okay.
So I do, you know, I do that, and I work for UMKC.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So
sorry, you told me.
Yeah, you're good. So at UMKC, I'm now a full-time photographer there, and I have an agreement with them that lets me maintain my business, but most of my business is repeat clients who I just do, like, family portraits of them, the occasional wedding, things like that. But that's really how I make my money is with my business and then UMKC together. But I do a very wide variety of photography, but I'm so lucky that all I do to make my living is photography.
Nice.
Yeah.
You're not door dashing on weekends and evenings?
No, but I'm not opposed to it.
Right.
I mean, I love to hear people's stories as well as take photos of them.
Yeah.
And so there's a part of me that thinks I'd be a great Uber driver, you know? Get in, let's have some deep conversations.
Absolutely. Yeah. So are you born and raised in the area?
I have kind of a back and forth history between Dallas and Kansas City. And in fact, I call both of them home. I consider myself a Texan because my formative years were spent in Dallas.
Okay.
But I've spent way more years in Kansas City at this point.
You still have family there? You go back often?
I go back a couple times a year. I don't have family down there. It's just friends.
Okay.
But I have the kind of friendships down there that I have maintained through the years. So,
yeah. Siblings?
I have one brother who lives here in Kansas City.
Okay.
He's a couple years younger than me.
Any idea how mom and dad met?
They went to high school together.
Really?
Yeah.
In Texas?
No, up here.
Up here. Okay.
It's gonna get real complicated.
Right on.
Yeah.
In KC Metro?
St. Joe.
St. Joe.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Right on. Did they put on music for you and your brother to listen to in the home when you guys were young?
Oh man, I have such fond memories. My mom, she worked some, but she stayed home quite a bit as well. And I remember this was in the golden age of MTV. In fact, I think it was when MTV was new, so it was like mid 80s.
Yeah.
But I remember her putting on MTV and sometimes the radio and like cleaning. And man, I have such great memories of that time and that music.
Yep.
Um,
I've said this 1,000 times, but one of my favorite memes is MTV turned 41 years old today. Thank you for 11 years of music videos.
yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah. So, and I mean, to this day, I love 80s music.
Okay.
So that sort of stuff was going on in the background of my life.
Yeah.
So.
So MTV or the radio, no record or cassette or CD collection for mom and dad?
I'm sure they had a record player. I don't remember that specifically.
Sure. So what about, so that's, I often refer to what you heard or viewed in the home as kind of, it's like the furniture because it's there. Fond memories, yeah, but you're not necessarily thinking of it critically in the way that you will later. And at some point, you start, they have their own tastes, right? And now they have this sort of joint taste, if you will, but then eventually you carve your own out. So I'm curious if there's, and we're not necessarily not thinking of your list just yet, but I'm curious if there's an album that you first fell in love with or bought or borrowed.
Ooh. Album is going to be tricky for me to name, but I will say this. So we used to drive back and forth from Dallas to Kansas City. In fact, we didn't take vacations when I was growing up. We would drive from Dallas to Kansas City to visit my dad's family, my mom's family, all of which were still up here. And I have really great memories from that. But on those drives, we always listened to quote unquote oldies.
Yeah.
And so to me, you want to talk about like shaping my musical taste.
Yeah,
I feel like
the sort of the beginning of it. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's a lot of singer-songwriter type music.
Okay.
Jim Croce.
Oh, wow.
Don McLean.
Okay.
I mean, way too many to name. In fact, there was a huge variety, but the ones that mostly stuck were singer-songwriter. And to this day, I still find myself leaning in to that genre.
Cool.
Yeah.
What about live music? Did you see any concerts with mom and dad or get taken to concerts as a young teenager or actually drive to them when you're of that age? Anything stand out?
No, we never went to concerts.
Okay.
Concert-wise, I've never really been big into concerts. In college, I went to a bunch of Dave Matthews Band concerts.
Tell me again where you went.
It was typically in the Woodlands.
Okay.
So I was living in College Station, Texas. And
Right.
the Woodlands was not far from there. So we
Okay.
would drive there and go. Probably 90% of my concert experiences has been Dave Matthews
Cool.
Band. Yeah.
I love Dave.
Yeah.
Fish is my
Okay.
the child I never had. And in fact, but my kids are named from their lore, both of them.
Wow. Jam bands.
Yeah, and there is, I will never admit how many times I've watched it, but there's a recent Dave performance where Trey joins on stage and they do a cover of Lie in Our Graves.
Oh, great
Well,
song.
I'm walking by, and dude,
Yeah.
I mean, Carter on the kit
Mm-hmm.
is just ear to ear. There's two horn players. If you look close enough, you catch smiles from both of them. The bass player, Dave himself, just phenomenal, and they've got a history of doing stuff together on stage.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's when they wrap up. Carter points to Trey with his drumstick and then does another roll and then stands up and points to him again. And it's, Trey has turned around to face him to sort of bring the solo home. And oh my God, it's so good.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'll check that out.
Seen Dave a few times. Yeah, they put on a great show.
Yeah.
And the most recent album he put out, I haven't given enough listens to fairly say my piece on it, but the one before that, which is probably now 5 years old, maybe the best album they ever
Really?
recorded.
I
Yes.
fell off Dave Matthews Band a long time
I
ago.
know, right? I was there, I was on, and then I sort of fell off early 2000s or somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But it's so good. It's so
Okay.
good. Yeah. So how about the proverbial light bulb, if you will? Was there an experience or a sequence of experiences where you found yourself being drawn to photography and thought, I don't know exactly how yet, but I want this to be part of my fabric?
That's a great question. I've always been interested in the arts. In fact, I like all the way back to high school, I was doing all of the arts. And I was kind of discouraged that a career in the arts is like you're destined to be a starving artist. And so I believed that.
Right.
And in fact, I completely changed trajectory and I started going to college and I had no idea what I was doing going to college. I was clueless when I left high school.
Yeah.
And I'm figuring it out as I go and making all the mistakes you can make. But I, thought, okay, well, I'm going to be a civil engineer or an architect. And
Those guys don't starve.
that's true. They don't. But I was like, my heart's not in that.
Right.
And then I eventually figured out, after changing majors several times, that psychology was the way to go for me. And, that's one where I was like, well, I do have a genuine interest in the human psyche and helping people. So this makes sense. And they do all right financially, I believe. But I realized I did an honors program the last year of school, and it was so much research, and it was painstaking to me. And I thought, I had a professor tell me, well, this is what grad school is going to be like. And I was like, I don't think I can do 2 years of this.
APA style, your psych papers.
Yeah.
Couldn't be drier.
Right?
Like, slogging through a paragraph that you yourself wrote. You're like,
I hate this.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got my bachelor's degree in psychology, and thought, I got the degree. Let's go figure out what I'm going to do. And it was right around then that I got my first SLR camera. So, I had kind of been getting into photography, but I'd had, kind of point and shoot cameras that I was beholden to what the camera wanted to do.
Right.
But I got that SLR camera and I was like, okay, all of this is customizable. I can make these decisions.
Cool.
And I was very interested in that. And so I started reading the books on it and shooting all the time, and it became obsessed. And unlike so many other things in my life, that obsession never stopped. In fact, it's almost a problem. I'm either taking photos or thinking about photos most of every day at this point. So I thought, well, this is where I belong.
Yeah, right. I'm in a similar spot for the second winter in a row in that I'm coaching youth basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we're like, I think tomorrow would be the actual midway point of the season. And so I know I don't see the light yet, but I know it's there. And I'm both of my kids' teams. And so it's like, I can't turn it. I'm in the shower, like, all right, so we got to work on the press break. And, it's
How old are the kids?
14 and 11.
Okay, so it's getting kind of serious now.
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes me, I put my head on the pillow at night and it's just like, okay, so we got to squeeze in some fundamentals it's just like, God. So,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
have a background in basketball?
No. No. I mean, I played for 4 years, but I've always been short. So by the time high school rolled around, I always knew I was on the bottom tier of skill set wherever I turned. I did go to KU basketball camp consecutive summers, and strangely or uniquely, the first year I went was Larry Brown's final season as head coach, and the next year was Roy Williams's first year.
Way to time it.
I was, yeah, right. No Pats for me on that, but it deepened or actually founded my appreciation for the game. Gave me actual tangible fundamentals in a way that just, because my parents are like, just get out in the driveway. You just get out there and just keep sucking, like day after day, week after week, year after year.
Yep.
So basketball, I followed KU for a good long time until I didn't. And it kind of just all but drifted from all of my bandwidth until my firstborn was, tiny and got her in the like biddy basketball at the YMCA and not long after that, her younger brother, like, oh, you might have a little something there. Fast forward to, pop a shot on the other side of the door and a dribble stick at the bottom of the staircase and a goal in the driveway and, mini hoops in a couple different rooms in the house. It's kind of, I just, have all but accepted that for a good 3 months out of the year, there's just going to be basketball everywhere I turn, which is cool. It's cool.
As long as they love it.
Yeah.
Man. That's perfect.
Yeah. And it'll probably drop off next year because she'll be a freshman in high school and probably won't go out.
I see.
She has been strongly encouraged and occasionally forced to participate, mostly against her will. And just as I was like, I give up, like stuff started clicking for her.
Oh.
And I was like, I love the sport, but forget about the sport. What I really wanted for her was to hone some confidence in herself.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, I know that somewhere we can, make that connection. And I think that it's happened to some degree.
Yeah.
So mission accomplished. If you don't want to go out for basketball as a freshman, I will make you go to your brother's games from time to time, which they both of them, are you making me go? It's like, dude, don't you want to watch your sibling play? Anyway.
Yeah.
But I know the feeling of it's almost a problem because it's like, I really need to even out the pie chart here of where my energy is going and put it in other places.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, very cool. I really appreciate you taking the time and staying with me, in the communication realm of making this happen. And it may sound silly, but all of the conversations look different. And they don't always wind up with a person in the chair. So when they do, I'm pretty geeked out,
That's great.
Grateful. So I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate you sharing a list with me. If it's okay with you, I just roll through them in chronological release order.
Oh, sure.
Which is not necessarily the order you gave them to me in.
Yeah. Totally fine. They're pretty random.
So if we do that, we start in 1991 with Metallica's The Black Album.
Yes.
Or self-titled. 5 of 11 for them, 12 tracks, 62 minutes. In my mind, I know there are probably metalheads that would disagree with me, but the iconic metal band out of LA. Shouts out to my guy Bill from episode 29 who had this one on his list. I'm curious if you can distill what Metallica means for the pantheon of American music.
Ooh. Well, kind of like what you said. I mean, so I know what you mean when you say that metal, there are the haters in the metal realm who are like, Metallica's not hard enough, or even that this album was different than their harder stuff.
Right.
But to me, this is as metal as it ever got for me. And in fact, I was never into metal.
Right.
But this band and this album, it's undeniable.
Absolutely.
It's just so good. And I think I was probably far too young to be listening to this, but I think I was about 12, give or take, when this came out and when I found it. I think a cousin introduced it to me.
Okay.
And I moved in with this cousin. This is when we moved back to Kansas City. And I moved in with this family, and we, just for temporary, until we found housing. But we listened to this album like every night before we went to bed.
The perfect lullabies.
I mean, when you're a kid, you can sleep through after anything, right?
All right.
But for me, the album is just, I mean, it's flawless. When I listed my albums, the ones that I picked for today, my criteria was mostly like, what are the albums that I can basically listen to all the way through?
No skips.
Yeah, and it's rare for me.
I think it's rare for a lot of folks.
Okay.
Myself included.
By the way, we'll get to it, but one of the albums that I selected, I kind of reviewed today, and I was like, this shouldn't have met the criteria. It was a formative album, so I'm glad it's there.
I have a hunch.
Okay. But yeah, this album, so I went through and I put stars by my favorite tracks of the albums that I selected.
Okay.
And this one, the first 8 songs have stars.
Nice.
And I mean, the last ones are good too, but it's just so good.
Well, when this made my buddy Bill's list for episode 29 in August of 2022, and I was writing down the track listing, I remember I was like, golly, I forgot how many bangers are on this. Same experience.
Yeah.
I was like, Jiminy Christmas. And also like, wow, I really kind of do know this album start to back, which is, metal has never been a thing that I would seek out.
Yeah.
But man.
Yeah. And the song Wherever I May Roam holds a special place in my heart because nobody connects this, but my username is it's Nomad Photog when I can get it, when it's not already taken. But like, this is how I kind of see myself as like, whatever the situation is, I'll survive it. I don't need the creature comforts. I can be a minimalist, where I can sleep wherever if I need to. And to me, that's like, it speaks a lot about who I am as a person.
Sure.
And so that song, I'm just like, I feel this on a whole different level.
Yeah.
That was exceptional.
It is. And that was one that caught my eye where it was like, golly, a lot of, without looking anything up or putting it on, just the default memory is that Enter Sandman is, the heavyweight. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, there's so many tracks that got radio play from a metal band.
Yeah.
And, get down to wherever I'm like, God, that's on here too,
Yeah, they just keep going.
So what about, if this was 5 of 11, what about 1 through 4? Did you ever poke around at those? Their first 4 albums?
Oh, so I discovered, for me anyway, Metallica at this album.
Okay.
So it has always been like the one. But I've since kind of gone back and listened, and I kind of stuck with Metallica after this album as well. Definitely nothing had an impact like this, but I actually wrote down a few of their songs that are still they just hit
What
really
are
well
they?
for me. So one,
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember watching the music video for that, and that is a dark video.
Do you know the origin story for that song?
No.
I'm not going to get all these details right, but I'm going to be in the ballpark.
Okay.
Dalton Trumbo wrote a book called Johnny Got His Gun.
Okay.
And I believe it's somebody that had served and came back like, this is going to sound hyperbolic, but I think this is the case. Quadriplegic, deaf, dumb, and mute.
Okay.
And imagine
Mm-hmm.
how
Right.
do you do anything? And the story is, if I remember correctly, if I have my facts straight, that this character is trying, like every waking moment is, how can I communicate to the person nearest me to end it? Because fuck this. This is beyond miserable. And I
Right.
think that story is where one is born from. I
That
think.
makes sense.
Yeah.
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 That
Dark,
makes sense.
dark for sure.
It definitely darker than I even realized when I was
Yeah.
listening to it.
Yeah. But a great one.
It
and,
is a great
and,
one.
you know, I think that all 4 albums prior to this have made folks' lists across the episodes.
Okay.
So, again, I would never, like, seek out metal just for, like, a joy listen.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, and Justice for All, Ride the Lightning, just, like, for the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Like, damn, like this is aggressive, but in an artistic way. And so, you know, listening to those albums, almost every song begins with some sort of cool, intriguing pocket of music, like one does. And then it builds and you get into it. And oftentimes it will return back to that to close.
Oh, yeah.
Which is really amazing.
And it's rare. And the way that I always thought about it was that there's a bunch of Metallica songs. Fade to Black is another one.
Okay.
Where it feels like it's 2 songs put together.
Yeah.
And that's what one was for me, and Fade to Black. And I can't really say for sure, but I know there's several more. That's like a thing that they do, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
It makes you appreciate the instruments a little bit more, because they're pretty long guitar solos.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
drum solos.
And they are, I haven't poked around too much, but I've seen the occasional YouTube clip or podcast clip or whatever where one or all of them are being interviewed, and they seem like ridiculously down-to-earth dudes.
I believe that.
And it's like, how do I marry that with the product that you? No.
Yeah, and they're still making music
Yeah,
today.
yeah.
I believe.
I think the 11th was from 2023.
Yeah,
So
it's amazing.
yeah. Any other Metallica tracks you got?
So I like No Leaf Clover.
Okay, I'm not familiar.
So it's I wouldn't call it lesser known, but it's from their album called S&M, which was Symphony and Metallica.
Interesting.
So they played with a symphony, and they only recorded it live, which I think is a shame, because a studio recording of all of that would be amazing. But yeah, so it's Metallica backed by a symphony.
Cool.
And it's a unique song. I love it. And then the other 2 I had listed are both on that album. So Wherever I May Roam and Nothing Else Matters.
Okay.
So
Golly. I mean, that was so. My folks split when I was pretty young. My dad had he had a couple consecutive full-size vans that were just like leisure, like really nice furniture and upholstery and
Okay.
beds and tables and just stained glass and woodwork, like crazy.
Okay.
But he had an 8-track player in both of them, and he had this little mini briefcase full of 8 tracks, and it was mostly John Denver and the Oak Ridge Boys.
Okay.
And a couple kid things for when we were in the van. But that was, if I was with him, that was, and then my mom, it was all oldies. And eventually I moved into the classic rock lane and stayed far too long. And as I was sort of 1 foot out the door of that, this comes out. And man, just remarkable.
Yeah.
Really remarkable. What was the very last one?
Nothing Else Matters?
No, yeah, so it's
Oh, you mean on the track?
no, exactly, nothing else. Like,
Okay.
I've got sound bites on repeat from FM radio. It's like Wherever I May Roam is Wonder, and then the guitar work in the Nothing Else Matters, that kind of the acoustic, ethereal, just
it's
remarkable.
exceptional.
Yeah. So we do just a single year leap to Dr. Dre, The Chronic.
Yep.
First of 3 16 tracks, 62 minutes. L.A., Metallica, short jaunt to Compton for Dr. Dre. Shouts out to Jason Fetters, who had this one on his list in episode number 25. And we're starting this part of the conversation off with just back-to-back epic albums. Like, totally two different birds of, a feather, but like Metallica, the Black Album, and Dr. Dre, The Chronic, like, you had to have been living under a rock
Not to be a part of those albums.
Yeah.
And the reason I chose this album, this is the one that I mentioned earlier that
I was right.
doesn't hold up for me as well, but it was absolutely formative. And really, there are 3 tracks on here that stand the test of time for me. Only 3, which is low considering the rest of these albums. But I started getting into hip-hop from, I want to say I was 10 years old. I remember there was a song by this band called Black Sheep.
Okay.
And I can't remember what the name of the song is off the top of my head, but that was like what drew me in.
Sure.
And then it slowly started to develop, and you meet certain people and they'll introduce you to something else. And 1992 this comes out, and I'm like, this is, I mean, I loved it even for they used to do skits on the hip hop albums back then. I loved it even for those.
I mean, it's just kind of the birthplace of it. One of the birthplaces of it.
Now looking back, I'm like, get out, just skip past that.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Yeah.
But
although the $20 sack pyramid is still entertaining. Bootney Lee Farnsworth.
But I looking back, I probably should have chosen Doggy Style by Snoop Dogg, because both of those in tandem, that was like the 1-2 punch of this age for me. And I literally remember I wasn't allowed to listen to the uncensored version of these because
you had good parents.
Yeah, I was like 11 or 12.
Yeah.
And somehow I got my hands on the CDs, and I had a waterbed at the time, and I would pull back the waterbed and like just put it underneath the bladder of the thing, and I had both of those albums hidden there until they were eventually found. But yeah, those, I was just completely drawn into gangster rap. Essentially, was what
that's
what
when I
was.
Talk about taking that first step out of camp classic rock. Gangster rap was it. It was, for me, it was Easy Does It, Easy Ease, Straight Outta Compton, by NWA, and then I got some Too Short. I got Ice-T and Ice Cube, and this came out, and it was sort of expected that if you dabbled in those waters at all, that you would just automatically embrace it but it didn't appeal to me. I liked the 3 big bangers on it, but to go back to it as an album, I was like, I don't know if I like this all that much. It wasn't until years later, really when 2001 came out, that I would go back and appreciate it for what. I'll go to my grave saying 2001 is 10 times the record this is. I mean, there's some funny, but there's also some like, geez, man,
Yeah.
portions.
For me, so the whole draw of finding these albums, it was that time in my life, you know, going through puberty,
Yep.
trying to figure out who am I,
Right.
and it's almost like there's this club, there's this people who are into gangster rap,
Yeah.
or you know, there's this other club of like music defined a lot of what those, you know, in groups were.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think I slipped further and further into it for years until I was like, oh, no, it's fine if I'm just into the music. You know, I'm just into this because I like the music. But looking back on that time period, I'm also like, I regret, you know, I think a lot of this stuff was actually like advertised for people like me. You know what I mean? With like kind of racist undertones, kind of glorifying that life, but also you know, to the detriment of people who are actually going through the things that they're talking about. Whereas artists who were putting out actual albums that are not, you know, gangster in nature, but they're actually talking about this is the way of life for us, like, you know, Most Def and A Tribe Called Quest, much better albums these people are putting out. Yes, De La Soul, and those went right over my head.
Same.
Because I was so focused on this.
I still have not like cleared the cache of shame to like whenever I discovered De La Soul and they were already like, you know, 3 or 4 killer albums in. It's like, where have you been?
Yeah.
You know, Bill Burr has a bit. It's an older bit where he's living in New York and he's dating this black girl, and he's got to get on the train and go way, way deep into Harlem to go to her place. And he's like, you know, when I first moved to New York, all black people scared me. But by the time I'm, you know, it's different now. And I think it was because you remember when gangster rap came on to the scene, and it's like, these guys have all the money, nice cars, all the girls, and they're still fucking mad about everything. You know, I don't, similarly but different. By the time the hits from this and the hits from Doggy Style are on MTV, and it's like, I mean, I feel like everyone is invited to the parties that these guys are having, and so, you know, don't be not invited, like get on board, right?
Yeah.
And some of them were just dope enough to where like there's probably, if you don't enjoy some of the beats, some of the things that those two were making, like, you should talk to your doctor. Like, how do you not want to dance to that and get out there and?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, Dr. Dre, something else. So let's see here. Slightly larger leap to 2006. Continuum. John Mayer. Third of 8, 12 tracks, 49 minutes, from Compton to Connecticut. The pop/rock guitar virtuoso that now helps front Dead and Company. Shouts out to my guy Dave, who had this on his list in episode 78. Please tell me about Continuum for Derek Benitz.
So, I know John Mayer gets a lot of hate, and from what I understand about some of the things he's done, maybe he deserves that. But musically,
right,
I think he's incredibly talented.
He is.
And we all know that he's a very good guitarist.
Yeah.
He's shown that through the years. But I also love his writing. I mentioned singer-songwriters earlier, which he certainly is one of, but like there's even a subgenre of singer-songwriters who are storytellers. And he has a lot of songs where he's a storyteller. And particularly, he thinks philosophically about the world. I can tell by the way that he writes. And so that's why his music strikes a chord with me. This album, particularly the 7th track, Stop This Train, I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's not one of his better known songs, but it's essentially about, I think he said he was having a quarter life crisis, if my timing is right here. But he was growing up and thinking, and this is like a depressive thought, but I think he was starting to think like, oh, I'm not on track of where I need to be. And he's thinking about death at this young age, and that can be very difficult. And he's thinking about his parents, and they're not going to be around forever. And that's what the song is about. It's about those thoughts and dealing with them in a productive way. But the song it's really good and so meaningful. Just like most of the album.
Yeah, when my buddy Dave gave me his list and this was on it, I was like, oh, interesting. I've never sat down and put on a John Mayer album. So I'm looking forward to it. And then when I got to it, I was like, wait a minute, this thing leads off with waiting on the world to change.
Which I think was the biggest hit from this album, but I didn't love that song.
Right. And more importantly, it's not a snapshot for what the album is or sounds like.
True.
It just happened to be catchy as all get out, and folks dug it.
Yeah. I do have to admit, though, and I mentioned this in my communications with you, I went back and forth. I struggled to pull out 5 albums because I'm not somebody who's like, these are definitely my top 5. And so I thought that I had put a different one on there.
Uh-oh.
So it's obviously not a big deal. In fact, if you don't mind, we can talk about 6 albums.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. I think I have 6 down for us to talk about.
Oh, perfect then. Because I went through the other 5 today.
If I'm off on whatever the 6th is, then we'll just have to ad-lib it.
Okay. But yeah, it's introspective. That's the one word I would use for this album and a lot of his work. He's famous for ballads.
Right.
Which I think he does very well, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But he is introspective and philosophical, and that is my draw to John Mayer. Yeah.
Well, there's a couple, whenever the Dead and Company thing first broke news or whatever, I was like, what? And then I went and saw them several times, and minute 1, I was like, oh shit, this dude has chops for days.
Yeah.
And I was surprised at how well he jived with the band and knew the material. And then interviews eventually started popping up, and it was like he put himself through like a rigorous degree, if you will, to learn. For my money, there's a pocket of 72 and a pocket of 78, 77, 78, where the Dead were just steam engines of joy. Just great stuff. And I've seen him talk about, right now I'm in a late 78, and he's like listening to all the live. I'm like, wow. That is, first of all, the Dead's music obviously isn't for everyone.
Right.
But to take it that seriously, and, it's the OG jam band, so they're not oftentimes, when you get to the live recordings, short tracks. But he's in there, like, with his fingers in the earth and, doing the work, and here's the end product. Golly, man. And there comes with that a lot of introspection as well, and it's palpable and it's admirable.
Yeah, I've listened to interviews, probably podcasts with him before, and I've heard him talk about, like, his albums, he switches genres quite a bit. He's got an album that's mostly country, which is also great. And I hated that upon first listen. But he is the type of person who, and he said this directly. This is not me guessing. He wants to challenge himself. So if he feels like he's done something well, he's not going to rest on his laurels. He's like, let's change this. Let's challenge this. And I think that's what led him to become the guitarist he is today. But that's also something else I identify with. You know, I don't want to just get comfortable and, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and again, similar but different. He approached the notion of sobriety with that same sort of portion of his DNA. And there's a great interview clip where somebody asks him, how do you, and or how did you arrive there, and what have things looked like since? And he has a lot of great points, but at the end of it, he goes, and to tell you the truth, there is nothing more magical than waking up in the morning and putting my feet on the floor and saying, I don't feel like shit today. And I was like, well, make a pretty good case.
You know, I've never been drunk in my life.
Wow.
Never once.
Okay.
Alcohol was a problem through most of my family.
Okay.
And somehow from a very young age, I was just like, not for me. So, I mean, I did drink occasionally here and there, but not quite a year ago, was like,
right.
I'm done.
Yeah.
None of it. So
yeah.
I'm also sober, but
yeah,
for different reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. That probably cost you a lot less money to get there than it did for him.
That's probably true.
I think he went pretty hard for a good long little bit, even if it was always socially rooted. Mm-hmm. You know, get beyond the income thresholds that most of us are on.
Yeah.
You know, you can
absolutely
do things bigger and whatever.
Yeah, which can be detrimental to many artists and musicians and famous people.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a bad deal.
So did we talk about how this one this one landed in your lap?
Oh, you know, this was 2006. I was almost done with college at this point. And honestly, like, I was so into John Mayer that this was inevitable. I was at that point waiting for his next album to come out. And so that's how I came across this
cool.
one. But
right on.
Just like every other album of his, I would play it front to back. And in fact, John Mayer is the only artist that I have an entire playlist dedicated to.
Cool.
Yeah.
Like, are you a Spotify person? Or okay, right on.
So I have my John Mayer tracks, and it's because I had so many of them in my general, like, loved songs playlist that I was like, okay, a lot of these are very old, and I've heard them so many times. I need to get them out of here. I don't want to, like, overplay them to death. So I was like, I'm going to put them over here. When I'm in the mood, put on some John Mayer and just John Mayer. So
cool. I want to keep moving, but I also want to dip out real quick and hit the washroom.
Sure.
So from 2006 with Continuum to 2011, The King is Dead. Did I do that right? I did do that right. I just have it. Oh, here we go. Yeah. The Decemberists. This is 6 of 9, 10 tracks, 40 minutes. American indie rock from Portland. I believe this is a first for the podcast in terms of Decemberists albums. Please tell me about them and how this album landed in your lap.
All right. Well, I'm honored to be the first to choose a Decemberists album. Admittedly, I came to the Decemberists party late.
Okay.
So my girlfriend, who is currently my girlfriend, we've been together almost 10 years.
Dang.
Yeah.
No pressure?
Sarah, yeah, we're not getting married. We're not that type.
Oh, right on. Okay.
But she introduced me to the Decemberists, and I was like, what is this? And they're definitely my favorite band right now.
Cool.
By a long shot.
Okay.
In fact, choosing my favorite album of theirs was extremely difficult because there's more than one that I listened to almost the entire way through. But yeah, storytellers, singer-songwriters, indie, like you mentioned, they also just really strike a chord for me, and they do kind of genre bending. They can get a little peppy rock. I wouldn't call them like to put the word rock next to them is kind of pushing it a little bit, but they can do that, and then they can also do these really slow, somber songs, which I'm into. And this album is one of their best, one of their core.
Safe to say that you know all of them well?
Yeah, and in fact, so I got to see them in concert. They came to Grinders
Okay.
2 or 3 years ago,
Nice.
and we got to go.
Good weather?
Oh, it was great. In fact, we lived so close to there, I think we walked.
Nice.
That was so cool. And I loved it, but I think since it was a concert, they wanted to play kind of their peppier stuff. And I'm just out there in the audience like, no, play the slower stuff. Maybe I'm the exception.
Didn't get my text?
Yeah.
My set list request?
But like particularly for me on this album, January Hymn and June Hymn and Dear Avery are 3 of my favorite songs of all time. But Don't Carry It All is one of their best known songs from this album, I believe. It's almost hard for me to say because I only pay attention to what I'm into.
Right.
But yeah, this song or this album I can listen to front to back. No problem.
So she was a fan initially and turned you on to them?
She introduced me to them, and I've never looked back.
Now, do you have Decemberists playlist on your Spotify?
No, but that's because they're still all in my my general liked songs, and I haven't played them to death yet.
Right.
In fact, they're almost getting to the point where I might need to, but one thing that I like to do is if I find myself playing a song too much, I will pull it completely out of the rotation to try and almost forget about it because I don't want it to get to where it's so stale.
Right.
You know? And I've had to do that with a few of their songs, but for the most part, like I called my playlist down, my just general liked songs, I called it down to 44 yesterday. And it's normally like just outrageously long. But there's still 8 to 10 Decemberists songs in there.
Of the 44?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm on to like almost like B-track, B-side songs of theirs that I'm absolutely loving.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll mention one while we're here. It is called Mariner's Revenge Song is what it's called. And it's unlike any of their other songs. It's kind of like an old-timey, it sounds like they're playing it on this old crappy wooden stage, you know? And it's a story about this mariner, and he gets revenge on a man who like mistreated his mom and made her go crazy and things like that. And it's a song that would never get airplay, and it doesn't fit with the rest of their tracks really. But it's kind of a fun story. They tell it in a fun way, and it's a great song.
Cool. You're like the Dave Chappelle meme. Y'all got any more of this December's rare cuts?
Right. That's me.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So as somebody who is not too hip on the Decemberists, you said you struggled choosing. Like you knew a Decemberists record would make your list, but you had to pick between 2 or 3, or
yeah.
And what were the others?
Oh man, album wise, I don't know if I could say them without looking.
Okay.
Can I just look real fast?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, do it.
This is why I wrote notes, because my memory is bad enough on names of things.
Have you hit age 40 yet?
I'm 45 now.
You are?
Yeah.
Okay. I turned 50 last month, so it's not going to get any better.
Okay.
I can promise you.
Well, and like, not to go on a rant about technology as an old man now, but like, I have become so reliant on technology that my memory doesn't get a challenge anymore.
Dude, I can't. So, 2 points to that. One, there's a great meme of I don't even know who the person is, but it's a picture of a face, and they're making like a real dramatic eye roll, and the verbiage is, "My ancestors watching down as I plug into the GPS a place that I've been 25 times before."
Yes.
So that I used to know how to get places. Two, this past Saturday, I have a lady friend in St. Louis for 5 or 6 years, and oftentimes Saturday we'll rendezvous in Columbia.
Perfect.
And I broke down en route, and just at 80 miles an hour, my car went boom, undrivable, and I had to like get over.
Yeah.
It was terrifying.
That's the nightmare.
And it was dark, and I was near Boonville, Missouri, which is aptly titled because there's not much else around.
I've been through there.
Yeah. If you would have said been to it, I would have been like, what were you doing there? But I mean, so I'm trying for the first 30, 40 minutes of this. Park is flashing on my dash. Like I cannot shift into drive. Turns out my transmission just shot crap, so now I need a transmission. But I mean, I'm like in chat forums, watching YouTube videos, trying to find where's the secret reset to let me just get back. I don't want to leave this car, and I was like 30 years ago, I would be walking to the nearest town. 35 years ago, if you're, in the dark, I was thankful that it wasn't 9 degrees out. It was a balmy 20 something.
Oh God.
I didn't have, I had a backpack and a cooler full of sodas, and that's how I've been doing. I've done this a bunch of times, and it's like, so, to your point, it's like your brain kind of atrophies in the remembering things folder because you have this device that'll just, that's how I do that. Okay, cool.
The whole concept of if you don't use it, you lose it is 100% true.
Yep.
We're going off on a tangent here, but
it's okay.
Like, I stretch, I move my body every day, I try to exercise my mind every day, sometimes better than others, but like that, for me, the memory thing is top focus right now. Start doing things that are going to exercise your memory.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, my mother, as well as my ex-father-in-law, are both real deep into those camps right now, and it is jarring.
I bet. Yeah.
It's just like, holy freaking cow, like that is not that far away from me. We're at right now.
Yeah, and you see,
and they've done none of that.
Okay.
None of that. In fact, questionably detrimental choices for many, many, many years.
I see.
Which doesn't help.
Yeah.
And my mom is, television and junk food. Mm-hmm. Like for my whole life, like that's where, just consuming garbage here and garbage here. Not that she didn't make meals and, she's not allergic to eating something healthy.
Yeah.
But I mean, keep doing it and easy. You'll see.
It's easy. And for me, that, like, the easiest way to sum up all of that is you have to do the hard things.
I know.
Whatever is difficult, whatever you least want to do, that's probably what's going to help you the most.
Yeah,
so.
I've used this with my daughter. She's struggled in a lot of different ways, and I, if I only did the things that I don't want to do, my life would be amazing. Because then you get to do all the things that you do want to do, right?
Yeah.
Well, so
album wise,
yeah.
So one of them is, it's called Terrible World, What a Beautiful World.
Great name.
Yeah, and that one has my very favorite Decemberist song, which is called Lake Song, which is indescribably beautiful.
Cool.
I wouldn't do it justice if I tried.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if anyone is listening and looking for some new music, start there. And then the other album of theirs is called The Crane Wife.
Okay. Fascinating.
Yeah, and The Crane Wife 3 is one of my very favorite songs of all time, and it's on that. In fact, there's a handful, but absolutely love the Decemberists.
Nice.
Can't get enough. I can talk about them the whole time.
Interesting story in terms of your discovery. I had a pretty significant relationship in college that spilled past it for some time, and music was a big part of that relationship. Crash by Dave was out, and I mean, it's the craziest story. She lived in this one bedroom above a spot called Stonehouse Subs, and the staff would get there and start baking bread like super early in the morning, and you could hear everything and you could smell everything. But up until that early morning moment in her 6-disc changer, for months was Crash, and then like all of the key Lilith Fair artists like Sarah McLachlan, and she's the only one that's coming to mind right now. But and she, at some point, like, our thing ended and we were kind of out of touch for a little while, but we reconnected on social media and whatever. But she was the first person to unintentionally alert me to the existence of the Decemberists. And I was like, oh, I wonder. And I hit play and I was like, that is exactly what I expected them to sound like. And it totally jives with who I remember her being in 1998 or 2000, whatever.
Okay.
And so, it just, all of it was exactly as I anticipated, which doesn't happen mostly in life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so a lot of admiration for them. They have obviously been pretty prolific and make music that touches people and inspires people. And so I was excited for this listen because I've never, beyond whatever moment that was, sat down and consumed an album of theirs. So I was looking forward to it. But I do have to say, leaving 2011 and getting to 2014, my absolute favorite from your list was from the Wreckage.
Oh, really?
Yes, The Wind and the Wave. This is the first of two from 2014 on your list. This one's out in August. It's their debut. They got put out 7 more, but this one's 11 songs, 39 minutes. An American band with Dwight A. Baker and Patricia Lynn.
Patty
Lynn, my bad.
That's how she goes.
And there's other musicians involved, but nowhere in their digital footprint do they appear interested in crediting those people. Which I always, Mike Campbell, I think it's Mike Campbell, who played guitar for years with Tom Petty. And it's like, he's on Tom Petty albums and he's on Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers albums, but his name isn't. Yeah, I mean, it's in the credits, as are the rest of the musicians.
Yeah.
You go, oh, here's the drummer, here's the blah blah blah, but nothing for the other 2 or 3 folks. So maybe they're from Austin. There's not a whole heck a lot of. But how did they land on your radar?
So, and I know far more about this band than I should probably.
Okay.
I've met both of them.
Cool.
And they're super lovely people. They really are, and they're so talented.
They have a portrait portion of their website. Really good shots, and I think they're both in all of them. And they are like, like photo 1 to photo 2, like he looks like a completely different dude.
Yeah.
And they kind of follow that pattern in that, like, different outfits, different energy, different poses. It's just cool stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, they're both lovely people, and they're super talented. And I say, like, I have not been to many concerts, but I think that one of the best tests of the actual talent of a band is how do they sound without all the frills, you know? If they can play live and you can actually hear them singing, like, they've got something here. It's not faked. And that's them for me. Um, I randomly, I think the algorithm or something randomly put one of their songs on my radar. And I was like, this is. In fact, I know what it was. It was Raising Hands, Raising Hell, Raise 'em High.
That was the very, like, I love song titles. And
They're so long.
anytime something's catchy, it catches my eye. So when
Yeah.
I was writing those, I was like, wow, that's something. And then, we talked earlier about undivided attention.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times when I'm listening to your stuff, I'm also doing my notes or writing. So it's, I say I've given this album one full listen, but it's not.
Most of a full listen.
It's not like I'm just sitting here doing nothing else.
Yeah.
That song came on, and literally I was like, what the? This is incredible. And I was like, oh, it's the one that stood out the most of all the weird. And then I feel like that around that spot in the album, all of a sudden this real crisp yet chunky lead guitar started just that I wasn't catching earlier in the record.
The my experience with this band, going to their concerts, I have all of their albums, it kind of made me realize that artistically, success is not, it doesn't come to those who deserve it necessarily.
Right.
Because this band they're still underground, but man, they're so talented and they're so good. And I mean, they're far more talented than many other bigger bands that we've all heard of. And I hate that for them, but I almost kind of selfishly like it for me.
Or for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, speaking of that, they came to Kansas City several years ago, probably like 8 years ago. And they played, there's a place in Westport that I don't think is even still around. But we got tickets, my girlfriend and I got tickets to that concert. And I was like, obviously we're going. And we went, and there were so few people there.
Oh, wow.
And on the one hand, I was like, I'm so disappointed for them. There's, it may be 40 or less people there. Like, I'm so disappointed for them, but I was also like, dude, I'm standing right here. Like, they're singing for me, and I can, just stand here and just take it all in.
Right.
And it was amazing. It's the best concert going experience I've ever had.
Awesome. You don't remember the venue name?
I cannot remember the name of that venue. I could look it up and find it, but I don't remember it off the top of my head.
It wasn't the Beaumont Club.
No, this place was, it was in Westport. It's right behind that that boutique shop that's on the corner of Westport.
Oh, well, it was the Hurricane for years, and then it became the Riot Room, or...
I think it was the Riot Room.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
I think that was it. Yeah, but it was super cool to see them, and my love for their music just continued to grow.
Now, when you said you have all their albums, actually? Like physical copies of some media?
Yeah, we resisted for years getting into LPs because I'm like, all of this stuff is essentially free for us, but we eventually broke, and of course I had to get all of their albums.
So you started buying vinyl.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Nice.
And this one, this is another thing where it was very difficult for me to choose from all of their albums. Their sound varies pretty greatly
From album to album?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But for this one, I think this kind of just hits me a little more than the rest. But I do love them all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, everybody has got to do their own thing. I mean, in terms of the way that you consume music. So, no judgment here in this question.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to assume that you have consumed this album from start to finish, both digitally and then also on vinyl.
Yeah, that's true.
Is there any uptick in excitement for when you put on the vinyl version, or is it just it's apples and apples?
There is now. I don't have as developed an ear that I can really pick out much difference between the two, except for the little sounds of the needle on the record.
Yeah,
which is nice.
yeah,
But I do. There is something to be said about putting vinyl on, and like, for one thing, the most obvious thing is you're listening to music in a completely different way.
Right.
When you put on music on your phone or whatever, you're probably only listening to one song and it's going to randomly go all over. But these artists put together this album in a certain way on purpose. This did not happen by accident. And it's something we take for granted. Like, we can listen to a song even by like a pop artist and we think like we're very dismissive of everything. This is just a song. This is just sounds hitting our eardrums, but it's not. Something happened to them that made them write this song in this certain way. They chose these certain sounds to go with these certain words. And they put that song together, and then they did that, 10 more times. And then they said, this is the order. This makes sense. This is how the story should be told. That is an album, and that's very different from...
That's before we were rolling, we were talking about, you kind of asked me about the why. And why am I doing this? How did you get? And I gave you 3 stool legs. It's really a 4-legged stool, and the fourth is that I love the album, and there's a lot of evidence in the world today to suggest that it's dying. Because a lot of folks, you can if you have the gear and software, you can make an album in your basement and do all all the pieces yourself, right? And then upload it. I love the idea of, especially in the 70s, this weird, no outline, no manual path that you go down to get discovered, right? And then all of a sudden, if you're decent enough performing live, and that's the way folks would get discovered, is that labels would have dudes that they would send around and find somebody, and then so now we've got a deal, we're signed to a label, the label's going to pony up all this money for you to go in the studio, and somebody once made a joke, you blow X amount of your studio budget just trying to set up the drums, but let's say you have somebody handling those pieces for you, but it's still whatever, 4 people, 5 people, they got to be in a space and exist with one another and create something, and fights happen, and bands break up, and people's personality traits, sometimes, drugs and alcohol and whatever, infidelity, all of these things can get in there and muddle up. But at the end of the day, if you make it through it, here's what I made for you, world. Yeah. And it's got artwork, and it's got liner notes where you're crediting musicians and engineers and mixers and masterers, and maybe there's some anecdotal funny stories in there, and the year, and everything has its own smell even. And so that's the other piece to this, is that
I totally get it.
Here's and what songs are making it, what songs are getting cut, what are track names, what's the sequence of track listing. I mean, just so many pieces to here's my thing.
Yeah.
So that's also why.
I get it, man.
So we're staying in 2014. Again, I really enjoyed The Wind and the Wave from the Wreckage. Yes.
Can
Yes.
I want to point out I have a list of my favorite Wind in the Wave songs for
Please.
people.
Thank you.
So Raising Hands, Raising Hell, Raise 'em High is obviously number one. The Redhead in Aberdeen, I think it's just Redhead in Aberdeen, is, oh, it's so good.
Not on this one.
It's on a different album,
Okay.
but it has vibes in the same vein as the Decemberists to me.
Okay.
Follow Your Heart Around, which is kind of, it's a little poppier, but that one's kind of inspirational to me. It's kind of like saying, money be damned, do what's going to make you happy. And so me as an artist, that like struck that chord.
Yeah.
We Burn It Down is another great song. And then It's Simple. So yeah, I could go on and on about them, but check those tracks out.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, we stay in 2014. That one was August. We move ahead to October 1989. Taylor Swift, 5 of 11, 13 tracks, 48 minutes. Mrs. Swift. Shouts out to my Swiftie guy. I have a couple of different series on here. One is called Becoming a Swiftie, and I've done 3 installments of that. Sophia, Christy, and Tisha, and I've got Lisa Alpert coming back to do the 4th installment of that series. There's also I've done a discography series where I sit and talk with somebody about Artist A's entire catalog. So if you want to come back and do a Decemberists or the Wind and the Wave episode, cool. We could talk about that.
All right, cool.
Taylor Swift is likely present in some fashion in what percentage of the humans on this planet in their lives? Is it 50 plus?
Ooh.
From all I've heard of her to like super fan, the whole spectrum. What percentage of the population would you guess?
Ooh. It's got to be 50 plus.
Right? That's what I wrote down. 50 plus question mark.
It's got to be.
So I know that a number of years ago, maybe even around the time that this came out, was when I first heard her name, but I didn't. And then all of a sudden it's like, you just can't get away from it. And
right.
Finally one day I was like, all right, what now? And I sat down and I was like, oh, okay. I get it a little bit. How did she enter your world?
Kind of similarly, like before this album, I had heard of her and heard a few of her songs, and I had pretty much fallen off of country in any way, which actually has kind of come back around. I'm listening to like Noah Kahan these days, but anyway. And I knew of her as a country music person primarily.
Record 1 for sure, and then record 2 is sort of still one foot in that.
Yeah, and so she was completely off my radar. And then this album came out, and I think, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think a girl I was dating at the time was listening to this album.
Okay.
And I was just like, and it was on Spotify or whatever. And I started asking, are these all from the same album?
Right.
And I thought, these are all like very catchy.
I mean, that freaking opener.
Yeah.
Well, I just got goosebumps. I got Taylor Swift goosebumps, and I'm not even...
Dude, people love to hate on Taylor Swift, but it's so catchy.
It is.
I want to ask, you mentioned that 3 other people had selected Taylor
Swift. One other's coming. She came and did her initial episode.
Okay.
And she's like, Swiftie. And I was like, yeah, I would love to have you. Yeah. So she's coming soon.
Am I the first guy to pick a Taylor Swift album?
I'm pretty certain.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, we just got to get over that. Like, good music is good music.
There's just, it's whatever. And the way that I finally was, Lover comes out in 2017, 2019. And You Need to Calm Down
Oh, yeah.
I was like, all right, that's where I started, and I was like, this shit slaps. What? And then I listened to, I think, a good bit of that album. And I was like, dude. I didn't make the dive then, but I was like, when new stuff, when it came my way, I was like, let's see, bring it on in.
So I'm pretty sure I'm right on this, but I believe she writes her own music and lyrics. I'm pretty sure that's right, at least to a large degree. And that
This
takes so much
Antonoff
time.
character, I think, has a hand in some of
Okay.
Jack Antonoff.
I'm not. Oh, that does sound familiar.
Yeah, he's worked with other artists too.
Okay.
But I think I can't speak to what his role is, but I think that he has either been a songwriting partner or very influential in the production,
I gotcha.
on the production end of things. I don't know what it is, but anyway, continue.
She's very heavily involved, though. She's not just singing this stuff, you know?
Right.
And to me, it's just like, it's hard for me to separate the music from what I know about her. But like when I hear of songs like "You Need to Calm Down," she's people are coming at her. When you're that famous, when you're at the tip top, everybody wants to see, not everybody, but a lot of people want to see you fail.
And
The
coincidence or
American
not, right now the Chiefs are there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we could talk about that for a while too. But yeah, when you're society loves to see a celebrity fail, you know?
So nuts.
Yeah. And people have come at her and she has responded in beautifully so many times. And she's such a good person. You know, she donates so much money here and there, and she just seems genuinely sweet. And like, I don't know how you can be a billionaire and be that way, you know? So, but all that aside, like,
Yet.
yeah, this is true. Don't get me wrong. I am not pro-billionaire by any means.
But I mean, would you be super bummed if you woke up a billionaire tomorrow?
I think I would find ways to give it all away. And I'm not just saying that because I'm being recorded.
No. But all?
I don't know.
How about 9/10? You give 9/10, and you just keep a little, just in case you want to go to Aruba.
Hey,
Or
wherever I may roam, I don't need anything.
Nomad Photog with the mic drop.
That's right. That's right. But I don't know. So this album, I mean, it's super catchy.
Yep.
I know that's what people say, like that's the draw of pop music, but it just is, and I can't get enough of it. I also have this album on vinyl.
Nice.
The Taylor's version, of course.
Of course.
But the track that I really love, in fact, I love the music video for this too, is Style.
Okay.
I don't know, it's just something about like kind of like Americana, and it's, you know, a classical relationship type song, but you know, it's lovely.
Yeah.
And we need some of that.
Absolutely.
So, and Shake It Off was kind of like another one of those response songs to Shaking Off the Haters.
Right.
And it's also like, you know, there are a lot of response songs that have been put out by major stars that were nothing more than just, here's my response to all of this hatred I'm getting. But for it to be like, that was a huge hit. That's a big deal.
Yeah, it really is.
So I don't really know what else to say about that, but again, like I'm a big Taylor Swift fan, and I'm not ashamed to say so.
Absolutely. I mean, so, you know, having done that series, started that series, you know, it was important to at least get one listen per album. And I can say no shame whatsoever. I probably won't revisit the first two.
Mm-hmm.
On my own time, just for my own personal listening.
Yeah.
Not because I dislike them, they're just not my jam.
Yeah.
But all the rest, I mean, Midnights.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't done due diligence for Tortured Poets and the side piece that came along with that.
I'm always behind an album or two.
Same,
right?
same. But I mean, there's a, you know, the majority of her catalog, I'm like, absolutely, this is great stuff, and good for her.
Yeah.
If she became what she became.
She's a huge role model for a lot of people.
Yep.
And a positive role
Yep.
model. And, you know, a lot of her songs are about like real things that you know, particularly women are going to go through.
Yeah.
But like, there's value to that. And, you know, just because something is popular doesn't mean it's good, but it also doesn't mean it's bad.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we've heard probably our own bag full of anecdotes from folks, but you know, when she, and I've said this on here before, when she Eras tour hit Arrowhead, Kansas City was buzzing for like a week, like palpable, like, you know, and then the shows come and go, and I wound up talking to or messaging with a gal that I like have known since kindergarten. And she and her husband have 2 daughters, and the 4 of them went to one of the shows, and he said, maybe the best concert experience I've ever had. He goes, it was like being at a Grateful Dead show without the drugs.
Okay.
Like, just because there's a huge like family community, at least old school, like, you know, like your people that, you know, Deadheads, they like walked away from their lives to just follow them, be on tour with them. And it's like, where's your next meal coming from? I'll trade, I'll barter, that kind of deal. But now it's like young people and friendship bracelets and not grilled cheese and bong rips. And
You know, I don't like to go to big concerts. I like little teeny concerts. But the Eras tour, I so regret not going.
oh man,
Because like I feel like that's like seeing the Beatles. That's as close as we're gonna get to
1000%.
seeing the Beatles on tour, or, you know, whatever the equivalent is. So I really regret not going to that. And if she does have another concert tour, I'm going. Though I don't think it can be the same. She's so popular right now.
Well, I mean, people, there was a whole lane on TikTok when her tickets for Eras went on sale of people just like losing their, you know, there's one particular where a gal was like laying on her stomach in the grass, kind of sunbathing next to her pool. And she, you know, had the man walking in the Ticketmaster queue.
Okay.
And she's on multiple devices under different, and this is the last bastion of hope. And she didn't, it didn't pan out. God damn it. Threw her phone and it bounced from the yard into the swing.
Oh man. Yeah.
Millions of anecdotes like that where folks just got shut out.
Yeah.
And you meet somebody like a unicorn. They're like, yeah, I got tickets. Like,
Yeah.
what? But great list.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. I usually close with a series of goofy questions, and then we'll wrap and get you out of here.
Hit me with them.
So the first one is, if we can pretend or imagine that we all have a personal and a professional bucket list.
Okay.
Let's say you're given all the necessary resources to go out, knock out your number one on both.
Okay.
What would they be?
Ooh. So it's hard for me to say what professionally means for me, just because like I love working for UMKC.
Go Roos.
Right? Go Roos. And I love that I get to do photography there. I also love that I get to do photography for my business. But ultimately, my goal is to just produce artwork that, for me, reaches that level of artistry that's hard to describe. I don't need acclaim. I don't need money. I don't need to be in a museum. But I want to produce some images that I think that's it. This thing, and I could go on and on about this thing. It's very hard to describe, but like certain artists have reached it. They've figured out what that is, and they've produced artwork that's in that echelon. That's what I want to do. Whatever that
I feel you.
sounds like. That's my professional goal, and honestly, that's my personal goal as well.
Sometimes they're one and the same. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big work-life balance person. I always have been, and so I protect that at all costs. And so I guess if I were to choose something personally, it would be that I lived a life that, I mean, not without regrets, but like I got out there and did the things as long as I could. So
I love it. That's fantastic.
thanks.
Okay, this one's newer, and
Okay.
I haven't figured out the the condensed version of it. But so I have this memory of textbooks, and being in middle school, and like you can tell when like something's pretty fresh, like it's been recently published, or this one's outdated,
Oh,
and
I see.
you know the spot in the front where you write your name, it's like got so many names that they've gone out of the little box.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember having this feeling in like 86, 87. It's like when we're looking at American history, it's like 13 colonies and Boston Tea Party and Revolutionary War and Lincoln, Washington, Civil War, and then like Jimmy Carter is kind of like the last, maybe a little bit of Ronald Reagan is in there, and then that's just 5 years old. So
Yeah.
I guess you just kind of, I'm always an album or two behind.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So here's the scenario. They haven't published a new one of these social studies books with the American history section since like 1985.
Okay.
They're going to do it now.
Okay.
But they're not expanding the amount of column inch space that the American history piece gets. So in order for there to be new information, they're going to condense all of that older stuff and make room for 85 to 2025.
Okay.
Are you following me?
I think so.
This is a made up, this is not actually what's happening.
Okay.
But that's what they're going to do. It's still this amount of space. They're going to shrink the old to make room for the new. So in that 30-year window, what are some three must-have pieces of American history from 85 to 2025 that have to go in there in your mind?
That's a very difficult question to answer. You think about the drastic changes that have happened in that time. First of all, I'm a huge proponent of the phrase, "Those who don't remember history are doomed to repeat it." So I worry if we're only putting three things in there.
Right.
Let's just expand the thing, and I know that's not answering your question, but three things. So I guess it would be the birth of the internet and all the things that come along with that.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is so difficult to answer because I'm sure I've got a bunch of blind spots, but
I think it would be weird if you thought it was easy and didn't think you had blind spots.
yeah.
So it does. They're not right. It's just what are the ones that pop off. And for what it's worth, internet is absolutely one of my three.
Oh yeah. So to me, I'm trying to think of what has affected the most lives.
This is a U.S. history section of a social studies book.
So I'm going to lump these together because they're semi-related, but the Iraq War and September 11th.
9/11 is also on my list.
Um, I mean, maybe. Oh, well, it's got to be the election stuff. Like,
Also, my third.
yeah,
Yeah,
Trump election times two and Biden in between. I think that's, if you lump that all together, that would be the third one, I think.
perfect. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm in my Cliff's Notes version. Like, we're not even forget about Biden's name. The fact that we did this and then what? Let's do that again. Like,
I think after, you were saying to 2025, I think the real effects of that are going to be after 2025. But yeah, I think.
I mean, if you look at day one and week one, like, you're not wrong. Like, it's going to be. I saw a clip today where a person was like, it'd be one thing if you, day one, you say to the attorney general or department, whoever, all right, I want you to go through the 1,500 cases of J6ers, I guess they're calling them now,
Okay.
and look at them. And the ones that were violent and did the ones that didn't do, so get me that list. But he was just like, nope, all of them. It's like, and they were this interview, this podcast. They were like, there's somebody that tased a cop into having a heart attack, and another person that like beat a cop with a baton, and just yep, all of them out. Like, what?
Yeah, my concern. I don't fully align with either side politically. My concern is that there was a time not long ago at all where whatever side you chose, it didn't matter. Democracy came first,
Right.
and that time has passed.
It's crazy, man.
It's
Absolute bananas. uh, Star Wars. When they give, if you've seen those films, they give Chancellor Palpatine the power, and he's out there, and what's her name? Natalie Portman's character,
Queen.
Queen Amidala.
Yeah, that's it.
What does Anakin call her though? Jiminy Christmas. But she, watching Chancellor Palpatine on that, she turns and goes, so this is how, or maybe it's Obi-Wan. Somebody turns and says, so this is how democracy dies. You're given the opportunity to visit your past self at any age of your choosing. What age are you choosing, and what are you saying?
Ooh. The first thing that comes to mind is I would go back to my high school self and tell that person, you can make it in the arts. In fact, if you don't do this, you're going to put yourself behind by many years. Because I had a partial arts scholarship that I passed up.
Oh man.
Yeah, but I do think about that sort of thing, and I think maybe things really do just happen for a reason.
For sure.
Because there's also every chance that I go back as my 17-year-old self and I get into photography immediately, and I'm like, I burn out on it, or I'm not mature enough to get the things that I need to get. So,
yep. My buddy Bill that had the Black Album in episode 29, his daughter hooped and hooped and hooped and hooped and had offers from three. Like, she went to Shawnee Mission Northwest, and so when the Lady Cougars Twitter account would tweet it's game day, it was a picture of her like doing a crossover.
Wow.
And yeah, and so she was presented with 3 offers to go to different school scholarships, and she was like, I'm done.
wow. I mean,
And also, if you do that, maybe you don't arrive at those little quote snippets. The stuff we talked
That's
about.
true.
You might not be that dude if you had.
yeah.
Well, anyway.
I think so much of our lives, we all like to think that most of what happens to us is because we tried hard or practiced or did the right things, and it's mostly luck.
Yeah. Yep.
And privilege.
Yeah. Yep. You're familiar with the one-time television program called Fear Factor?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is not for reality television or a competition or a game show or whatever, but just in the general department of heebie-jeebies,
Okay.
willies, icks. What would be the worst case scenario for Derrick Benitz in terms of that stuff?
I don't scare easily, and I don't get grossed out easily. So I'll tell you one of my weird tics.
Okay.
So this is a way to torture me if anybody.
Let me sharpen my pencil real quick.
So, have you ever heard of misophonia?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so it's like a sensitivity to sound, like if you can't stand the person sitting next to you chomping their or like slurping their
Pho.
yeah, that is a form of it.
Okay.
But some people have more than others. And there are certain sounds that drive me absolutely bonkers. And one of them is people who are pouring liquids more slowly than they need to.
Yeah.
Like if a waiter comes over and he's like very slowly pouring the water to like make a scene of it. I'm just sitting in my seat just like pour out the fucking water.
Right. So you don't spend a whole lot of time on TikTok in the ASMR lane?
No, that would drive me crazy. I've heard they do like tapping of mics, which also would drive
Scratching,
me nuts too.
There's a really, really cool account, and he's on Instagram as well. Old Time Hockey, and he spells it HAWKEY.
But he's a hockey person. Like,
Absolutely.
Okay.
And he is so amazing. I have spent so many hours watching his stuff, and he lives in the cedar swamps in like Michigan.
Okay.
Just a very
Hockey
tiny
country.
but he's in the woods.
Okay.
But he's got a very, very small cabin, 2 dogs, and he's got every retro gaming system you can think of.
Okay.
And his clips are almost always of the same ilk, which is, well, hello there, buddy, when it starts.
Uh-huh.
And he suggests, how about, some of my famous Texas chili and some Super Mario Brothers. And he'll make a little meal and then put on, and they're all like 30 seconds. But sometimes he's out in the woods and he'll make a pudgy pie. So he's got one of these like big steel 2-handled thing with a little rectangle, and you put the ingredients in there and just stick it in the fire and it bakes it. So he'll make whatever the snack, the treat is, and there's almost always a beverage, and then there you go, buddy, presents it to you, the viewer, and that's it. But he'll always say, served with an ice cold pop, and he pours like a soda.
Yeah.
Or if he's doing a breakfast item, he pours coffee, and he calls it jitter juice. But he pours it pretty slowly.
Oh, God. Yeah.
But his stuff is soothing. It is so great.
Okay.
Yeah. And like if he's got to use a hot mitt, it's always like a hockey glove.
Yes, that's a nice touch.
Yeah. Sometimes he's done fried things, and he'll get like cornflakes or whatever in a Ziploc bag and put it on the ground and go back and forth with a hockey stick, and that's how he crumbles them up. Anyway.
It's also a nice touch.
Yeah.
I'll have to check out one of his videos and let you know how crazy the pouring drives me.
Fair. It's yeah. What mine, just for shits and grins, is always this idea of Kill Bill when she gets chloroformed and buried alive.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I see.
Fuck that.
Yeah.
Or the Titanic submarine thing that just went off the grid and down below, and
I mean, that would be an awful way to go.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, that stuff like leading up to it, it wouldn't. I'm not claustrophobic at all.
It would just, I don't know. I would go crazy.
You know, you might become claustrophobic after something like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
I was buried alive.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Please complete this for me. The world would immediately become a better place in which to live if only.
Everyone exercised empathy.
Oh, I thought you were going to say exercise, period.
No, it's
I love it.
it's a lack of empathy that's leading to all of this.
You're right. Absolutely.
It's just empathy, and like you can have too much empathy and that can lead to bad things. I think a lot of people who suffer from depression have their empathy turned up very high. That's a whole different discussion.
Right.
But essentially, if people were actually empathetic and could actually like think how their decisions and the political decisions and the people they vote for, how that's going to affect their neighbor for real, I think it would change a whole lot of the world.
1,000%.
Yeah.
So at Nomad Photog on Instagram, DerrickBenitz.com, which is DerrickBenitz, all one word. Any other plugs?
No, I'm awful at social media.
Fair.
Find me if you want to, but
Yeah. Anything that you had hoped that we would cover that we did not?
Ooh, that's a good question. We should talk about the Chiefs a little bit,
Let's do it.
right?
Yeah. Go.
What a season they're having.
That's the first thought I had when I asked you if you were born and raised here, and you're like, so Texas and Kansas City are almost like sort of like our football team, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Dallas, Texas. Anyway.
And to this day, I'm a Cowboys fan as well.
Okay.
Which is a lot harder these days, but the Chiefs have just been. I mean, it's so cool to live here at a time when they're just so dominant. Like 5 years ago, nobody would have said Kansas City, or probably 7 years ago, nobody's going to say Kansas City is a football town. You know, the Chiefs were like lower ranks of the NFL, didn't get much attention, anything like that. And that is so different now that there are people being born in this city who think it's just all winning. And it's so cool. It's so cool to see that. But yeah, like I think they're playing extremely well right now, and they're ramping up at a time when they need to. They're really balanced defensively and offensively. I'm not like an expert, but I've watched every game this season.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, I used to, for a good little bit, I had a sports blog with a couple of high school or college newspaper staff buddies. And just for many, many years, just a world of perpetual disappointment.
Yeah.
And I have in the room just over by that bathroom where most of my cassette collection still lives. I have stacks of Monday Kansas City Star print editions because you would get all of the beat writer takes, the objective, the stats, and then you would get Jason Whitlock and Joe Poznansky columns, which is kind of like two different takes, obviously looking at the same game and the same team. And I started this collection, I mean, for years and years. And then I finally couldn't take the Star price increases anymore and had to cancel.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm canceling, and I hang up the phone, and the Chiefs draft Patrick Mahomes. So I have none of the good stuff.
Oh, man.
Just years of just sadness.
Yeah.
Taking up shelf space.
Maybe that's what did it.
And then, right. And I would be mad. I would be mad through like Wednesday. And then Thursday, I kind of shake it off a little bit and be renewed and reinvigorated for this coming game. But if it's a loss, I mean, when the Alex Smith led Chiefs beat the Texans 30-0 in the playoffs in 2017, whenever that was. That snapped a playoff win drought long enough for that drought to be able to legally drink.
Oh man, yeah, I remember that.
21, maybe even as high as 24 years between playoff wins.
Yeah, I think there was a season where I don't remember who the coach was at that time. I don't think it was Schottenheimer, but they went like almost undefeated, and then they got knocked out in the first round of the playoffs.
We were 13-3
Okay.
with a first round bye, home field throughout in 93, 95, and 03. So it was two seasons of the Marty regime, and then one was Dick Vermeil.
Okay.
And yeah, we lost to the Colts when in 95. Sorry, it was 95, 97, and 03. So in 95, we lost to the Colts in a really, really cold game in which Lynn Elliott missed 3 field goals, and we lost 10-7.
Oh.
In 97, the only time we faced the Broncos in the playoffs, one time out of 60 years or whatever. They're the wild cards. We have first round bye. We're 13-3, home field throughout. So they come into KC for the divisional round and beat us 14-10. Tony Gonzalez had a touchdown nullified because he was out of bounds, which he was pushed. And then there was a phantom holding call that went, and the Broncos went on to win the goddamn Super Bowl and the Super Bowl after that.
That was, who was the quarterback?
Loaded question. It's Elvis Gerbach.
Oh, who was the quarterback for the Broncos at that time?
John Elway.
That's what I thought.
Who got hurt. Elvis Gerbach got hurt. Rich Gannon came in and played immeasurably better.
I can't imagine that. But yeah, I mean, I can't imagine in the playoffs, you're the sub, and you're like, go out there and do
playoff
something.
game comes around, general manager Carl Peterson decides for Marty.
Oh.
Elvis goes back in instead of sticking with the hot hand. So then fast forward to 2003, 13-3, first round bye, home field throughout. We lose to the Colts in a game where neither team punts. It's just score, 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 turnover, score. Because it's Peyton Manning, and we had this amazing offense. Dick Vermeil, fresh off of his run in St. Louis, where they were the greatest show on turf. Just this high-flying Kurt Warner, blah, blah, blah. And we lost to Peyton Manning and the Colts.
Well, I'm glad those eras have passed.
God, they were so miserable.
Yeah.
I learned, not in any of those, but in 2007, under Herm Edwards, we would go in as a low seed and end up facing the Colts. And we didn't get a first down until halfway through the third quarter.
That's a rough football game.
And I was we're all going to Buffalo Wild Wings. And I was like, I don't know what, but I got a really bad feeling about that.
Yeah.
And I got there and I was like, oh, I know what it is. It's I can't tolerate my own upset.
I see.
When things aren't going well.
Yeah.
Now I have the upset of 150 rowdy drinking
Oh yeah.
folk. It's like I'm never again going out for a Chiefs, and I haven't. That was almost 20 years ago, and I haven't.
It does affect me more than it ever has. As I get older, I'm like, I'm so stressed out during these games.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I was sweaty palmed from start to finish during the Bills game.
Yeah, that was a hell of a game, though.
Golly, it really was. Well, but maybe by the time this is out, they're 3-time back-to-back Super Bowl champions.
Yeah.
Funny, when I was in school at Fort Lewis College in Durango, the mountain biking team went back-to-back national championships. And we ran, our front page above the fold was three-peat with photos from the championship. And at the time, there was maybe legislation or a court case or something saying that the Lakers had trademarked that and that you couldn't use the word three-peat. Like, we had a legal advisor that would come look at the
Wow.
corner to corner of the paper before sending it to press to make sure we weren't going to get sued. And that paused things that week for a good little bit on whether or not we were
Interesting.
going to be able to use that term.
When the Chiefs won on Sunday, I told my girlfriend that this is the repeat for the three-peat, because we're playing the Eagles again.
Right.
And I thought, oh, that's actually kind of good. I wonder if anybody else is using that. Kind of the same thing. But how interesting is it that we're having this conversation, and when it releases, the Super Bowl will be over?
Yeah.
So let me ask you a couple of questions.
Yeah.
What's your prediction for the Super Bowl?
Well, I'm not the right person to ask because I was convinced, I've got all those years of disappointment still in my
You're still jaded?
I was certain we were going to lose to the Bills by 2 scores. I was like, in my heart of hearts, Josh Allen is good. That team is good. As far as I can tell, they're well coached. It seems to be like maybe you are until you face an Andy Reid, Steve Spagnuolo coached squad. Mm-hmm. But zero chance that Josh lets another one slip away, that we can't just keep coming out on top of these things. And then I'm just like, golly, man. So I think from where I sit, which is not a real spot in this particular conversation, but Nick Sirianni appears to be kind of a piece of shit.
Okay.
Like, I can't stand that guy.
Oh, okay.
And there's a clip, I think it's from last year. We played him here in the regular season, and he's leaving Arrowhead just screaming gross, angry tirades at Chiefs fans. Anyway, it doesn't change the fact that it's a loaded team, and Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley scare me. But I also said there's no way going into the Buffalo game that we can. Our run defense scares me. I don't think we can contain Josh Allen and Cook, the running back, and we kind of did. But there's our folks that say, Cook was crushing it all game. Why did you go away from the run in the fourth quarter? You don't have to necessarily pass to, if nothing else, 1-2 big run plays that get them in field goal position. But that's neither here nor there. The jaded pessimist in me says we get as close as you can possibly get to a three-peat, but fall short. Okay. And the world collectively sighs in relief that they no longer have to acknowledge that this is one of the greatest teams of all time.
That's true. We are the villains, and I don't like that for us, but I'm a firm believer in the whole any given Sunday. Right? These are the best of the best, and things happen.
Yep.
There's more luck involved than we like to think. But I do think the Chiefs are the better team, and I'm an optimist, so I think we're going to pull it out.
Did you see Patrick Mahomes' Instagram post after the game?
No.
Just the meme of Kermit sipping the tea. Yeah. Meaning, I've heard all the shit.
Oh, yeah.
All the shit. I've seen it all. Here I am.
And I've been at the, I don't know if I went to both of them, but the Super Bowl rally after the win, I was there last year. And to hear how motivated they are by the haters out there, there's so much more of it this year. I'm like, oh, they're letting it fuel them, and I think that
hopefully they're a little more sober.
Yeah,
Travis was rough.
He was pretty rough there.
Yeah.
I don't blame him though.
No, well deserved.
Yeah,
but you're on TV, and there's lots of.
One last question for you then. Do you think that Travis and Taylor are going to get married or get engaged anytime soon?
Great question. I've thought about this off and on just randomly for a couple of years now. And I kind of feel like, again, from my seat, which means nothing, but from my seat, it looks like things are pretty good the way they are. So take the old guy adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
Obviously, I have no way of knowing what either of them wants on a personal level.
That's true.
What do you think?
I mean, it's interesting that I even asked this question because I don't follow celebrities' lives at all.
Right.
None. I just happen to know. And I've met Travis before, and he's such a nice guy. And they do seem like a good fit.
Yeah.
I've obviously never met her, never hung out with them.
Right. Yet.
Right. Yeah. But, I mean, how cool would it be to three-peat and then ask this girl who is the most famous woman in the world to marry you?
Yeah.
It's too much. In fact, it might not happen simply because it's too much.
Yeah.
But it's like, if
How
it
do
were
you...
scripted in a movie, they'd be like, no, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, the proposal, all that goes into the planning of a wedding.
Yeah.
Like, that's just a decade worth of paparazzi and columns and blog posts and, she's trying on these shoes this week. Jesus Christ.
They'll just go to the Justice of the Peace.
Yeah, exactly. I do have to say, I couldn't have been happier as somebody who had with a Decemberists gal. When that relationship was happening, we went out for disco night every week, and just the threads and the dancing.
Wow.
Yeah. So when he did, you got to fight for your right to party, and then Viva Las Vegas, and he got up on the podium on Sunday. I was like, is he going to drop another? And he went Casey and the Sunshine Band, do a little dance, make a little love, get down tonight. I was like, bravo, sir. As a lover of Casey and the Sunshine Band.
That's amazing.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. It was nice to meet you, and I've really enjoyed our chat, and hope to talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks.
You.